A group of Indigenous leaders are calling on Prime Minister Mark Carney to showcase the game-changing potential of Canadian liquefied natural gas at the upcoming G7 Leaders Summit in Alberta. The National Post's Rahim Mohamed joined us to unpack what the letter from Indigenous leaders said.
So the Indigenous leaders are trying to set the agenda or help set the agenda ahead of the upcoming G7 summit, which is going to be taking place in the middle of June in Kananaskis, Alberta. They're basically saying to Prime Minister Carney, turn the page from some of Justin Trudeau's pessimistic messaging on LNG. So Justin Trudeau was never seen really as an enthusiastic cheerleader of Canada's oil and gas industry. In particular, he rebuffed a number of his G7 colleagues, notably Germany, saying that there was no strong business case at one point for shipping Canadian liquefied natural gas across the Atlantic. So they want Carney to start off on a more positive tone. And they're saying, look, basically for us, developing natural resources like liquefied natural gas for Indigenous communities across Canada, this is our straightest path to upward mobility, to escaping poverty, to escaping boil watery advisories, to improving our standards of living. A lot of these projects that are under development are either Indigenous owned or have a substantial Indigenous equity component. So Indigenous communities in particular have a lot to gain from the Carney government taking a more enthusiastic and a more accommodating approach to LNG development than Trudeau did.
We also discussed some of the major infrastructure projects that are needed to be able to export LNG.
So there are currently a few projects under development. The first one that is in the north coast of British Columbia in Kitimat is set to begin shipments later this year, this summer. Two more are underway. Both are either Indigenous owned or have a substantial component within surrounding Indigenous communities. I'm not going to get too much into the science of LNG export terminals, other than to say that these are very expensive, large-scale facilities. One of the challenges with natural gas, which, as I'm sure you know, at room temperature, it comes in gas form, is getting it to a temperature where it can be liquefied and transported via vessel across the Pacific or across a marine body. So these are multi-billion-dollar projects with a substantial infrastructure component. But a big issue has been a regulatory environment in Ottawa that's persisted through the Trudeau government.
Lastly, Mr. Mohamed broke down the environmental impact if Canada expanded its LNG production.
So this is quite interesting, and this is something that is, I think, an ignored part of the conversation. There's still a lot of the world that generates its electricity using coal. Coal is one of the dirtier burning fossil fuels. Your average megawatt or whatever unit you want to use of natural gas burns about half the carbon emissions as coal. So there is an argument that building up and scaling up Canadian natural gas for shipment to places like China and India and elsewhere in the Indo-Pacific region will actually reduce the global footprint. There was recently a study by the Fraser Institute that said, if we were to double our production of natural gas and export the surplus to markets in Asia, Canada would globally reduce the equivalent of its entire carbon footprint for a year or thereabouts. So there's an argument to be made that scaling up LNG and being aggressive about getting Canadian LNG to markets in Asia in particular could actually reduce the global carbon footprint.